Toby will live and be loved forever through his music and the legacy that he's left. He wrote songs that were so compelling that people knew a man was living those words.
For nearly 40 years, she stood beside one of country music's biggest stars, supporting him through broke nights, bright lights, and everything in between. When stomach cancer took Toby Keith at 62 in February 2024, his widow Tricia Covel disappeared from public view, until one emotional October night when she finally spoke. What she revealed stunned fans, brought tears, and reopened questions no one was ready to ask. From their scrappy club beginnings to massive success, private pain, and a legacy that isn't as simple as it seems, this is the story country music never saw coming. The shocking reveal that left country music stunned. The Country Music Hall of Fame ceremony on October 20th, 2024 was supposed to be routine. A respectful crowd, a brief, emotional acceptance speech, a few tears, then applause. That's the script. What nobody expected was 16 straight minutes of raw emotion that completely hijacked the room. To put that in perspective, most acceptance speeches run 3 to 5 minutes. Hall of Fame speeches may be stretched to 7. 16 minutes is unheard of, and yet no one moved. No one interrupted. You could hear a pin drop. The room was thick with grief and tension. Artists who'd known Toby Keith for decades sat frozen, tears streaming. Blake Shelton wiped his eyes. This wasn't polished or performative. This was real. Standing at the podium, Tricia Covel's hands trembled. She admitted, "This was the first time I've been able to talk since losing her husband just 8 months earlier." Her voice caught when she said his name. Her breath hitched. Behind her, their son Steelen stood bathed in blue light, clearly ready to step in if she faltered. But Trisha didn't need rescuing. This was a woman who had spent nearly 40 years avoiding the spotlight, finally letting it all out. And she did not hold back. She spoke about the quiet moments fans never see, the strangers who stop her in grocery stores and airports. "They shake my hand and say, 'You're Toby's wife, aren't you?' She shared. "I say yes. They say, 'I miss him every day.' And I say, 'Me too.' And then we're both crying." The room cracked open. Then came the gut punch. Trisha revealed Toby never even knew he'd been inducted into the Hall of Fame. The call reportedly came just hours after his death. The audience gasped. But in classic Toby fashion, she softened the blow with humor. "He didn't get a chance to hear the news," she said, smiling through tears. "But I have a feeling," in his words, "he might have thought, I should have been." The night included powerhouse tributes from Post Malone, Eric Church, and Blake Shelton, but none of it topped Trisha's words. "There will never be another Toby Keith," she said. No one argued. When she finally stepped away, the standing ovation is rumored to have lasted nearly 3 minutes. By morning, clips had gone viral. Fans filmed themselves sobbing. Media outlets scrambled for answers. One question echoed everywhere. Why now? Why did she finally speak? And more importantly, what else has she been holding back? The secret battle nobody knew about. Let's rewind to the nightmare that started it all. In June 2022, Toby Keith shocked the world by announcing he'd been diagnosed with stomach cancer in fall 2021. But here's what will blow your mind. He'd been battling it in secret for 6 whole months before going public. Think about that for a second. While fans were living their lives, attending his concerts, buying his albums, Toby was undergoing chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery without a single leak to the press. In an industry where everything gets out, the Keith family kept this devastating news under wraps with military precision. But let's talk about what that really meant. Behind closed doors, Trisha became more than a wife. She became a full-time caretaker, emotional support system, and keeper of their biggest secret. Can you imagine? Watching the man you've loved for 40 years suffer through brutal treatments, losing weight, battling nausea and extreme fatigue, all while maintaining a brave face for the world. The isolation must have been suffocating. No venting to friends, No asking for prayers on social media, just Trisha, Toby, and their immediate family, fighting a war in silence. And the battle? It was brutal. Keith himself called it pretty debilitating in a December 2022 press release. But being the fighter he was, Toby refused to go down without swinging. Fans saw strength and optimism in his public statements. Trisha saw sleepless nights, canceled plans, and a man determined not to let cancer define his final chapter. The chemotherapy side effects alone would have broken most people, but Toby kept writing songs, kept planning comebacks, kept being Toby Keith, and Trisha held it all together when he couldn't. In September 2023, he told E! News, "It's a little bit of a roller coaster. You get good days, and you're up and down, up and down." That simple statement? It barely scratched the surface of what they were living through. The real gut punch? His tumor had shrunk by about a third, giving everyone hope that maybe, just maybe, the Red Solo Cup singer would beat the odds. He even made his triumphant return at the People's Choice Country Awards in September 2023, performing "Don't Let the Old Man In" to a standing ovation that lasted for what felt like forever. His final performances came in December 2023. 3 sold-out shows in Las Vegas that were supposed to be rehab shows to get the band back in sync. "Through COVID and cancer, the old devil's been after me a little bit," he joked in a video announcement. "I've got him by the horns right now." But the devil had other plans. Just 2 months later, on February 5, 2024, Toby Keith passed away peacefully in his sleep in Oklahoma, surrounded by his family. Trisha was right there beside him, holding his hand until the very end, just like she'd been holding it for 40 years. Here's what makes this story even more heartbreaking. The love story that defied all odds. Before the millions, before the platinum records, before the sold-out stadiums, there was just Toby and Trisha, 2 kids in an Oklahoma nightclub who had no idea they were about to write one of country music's greatest love stories. It was 1981, and Tricia Lucas was working as a secretary while 20-year-old Toby Keith was performing with his Easy Money band at local bars. "I was 19 and he was 20, Trisha remembered years later. "He was just one of those larger-than-life guys, full of confidence." That confidence? It sealed the deal. After 3 years of dating, they tied the knot on March 24, 1984, when Toby was just 22 years old. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Trisha brought a daughter from a previous relationship, Shelley, and Toby immediately adopted her as his own. No hesitation, no drama, just pure love. But wait, this is where things get tough. Remember, this was 1984, and Toby Keith wasn't Toby Keith yet. He was working in the oil fields earning $50,000 a year, a respectable living, but nothing glamorous. Music was just a hobby at that point. Then disaster struck. The oil industry collapsed. Most men would have gotten that real job everyone kept telling him about. But not Toby. He decided to chase his impossible dream of making it in Nashville, and Trisha, she stood by him even when everyone told her she was crazy. Dozens of people told Trisha, "You need to go tell your old man to get a real job," Toby later revealed. The pressure must have been insane. They had bills to pay, mouths to feed, and everyone thought she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Let's be real about what those years looked like. There were nights when Trisha lay awake wondering if belief would pay off. She wasn't just a supportive wife. She became the unpaid manager, the emotional CFO, the one who juggled bills and kept faith when logic screamed otherwise. She booked gigs, promoted shows, and believed when even Toby had doubts. The strain was real. Friends got stable jobs, bought houses, and took vacations. Meanwhile, Trisha watched other couples judge them, whisper about them. But every time doubt crept in, she'd hear Toby's voice. "Trish, one of these days, my time is coming. Hang in there." She chose to hang in there. Not because she was naive, but because she saw something nobody else did. She saw the work ethic, the talent, and the stubborn refusal to quit. But Trisha believed. He'd say, "Trish, one of these days, my time is coming. Hang in there," she recalled. And honey, did that time ever come? In 1993, his debut single, "Should Have Been a Cowboy," exploded onto the country music scene, launching a career that would span over 3 decades and earn him a staggering fortune. Together, they expanded their family, welcoming daughter Crystal in 1985 and son Stellan in 1997. Through it all, the fame, the fortune, the constant touring, Trisha remained his rock, his anchor, his everything. "Most people think he is just the most romantic person on the planet," Trisha once told People magazine, adding with a laugh, "He has his moments of charm. It is nice to get a bouquet of flowers, but I've told him, save the money. Roses die in 5 to 7 days. Buy me an outfit or take me to dinner." Their final red carpet appearance together was at the 2023 People's Choice Country Awards, where Toby won the Country Icon Award. That night, Keith's performance left Trisha in tears. And now we know why. It was the last time they would share that stage together. But what happened after he died? That's where the story takes a shocking turn. Early life. The boy who would become a legend. Before we dive into what happened next, you need to understand where Toby Keith came from, because his roots shaped everything about who he became. Toby Keith Covel was born on July 8, 1961, in Clinton, Oklahoma, to Carolyn Joan née Ross and Hubert K. Covel, Jr. He had a sister and a brother, and the family bounced around during his childhood, living in Fort Smith, Arkansas, before eventually settling in Moore, Oklahoma. Here's where the music bug bit him hard. His grandmother owned Billy Garner's Supper Club in Fort Smith, and young Toby would spend summers there doing odd jobs and watching musicians perform. He got his first guitar at age 8 and never looked back. Those summers taught him work ethic, grit, and the Oklahoma spirit that refuses to quit. The oil fields taught him discipline and toughness. Those years shaped the blunt personality that would later make him a patriotic icon. The man fans called "Too Bold" was forged in Oklahoma's dust and heat, where hard work wasn't optional and pride wasn't negotiable. But music wasn't his only passion. Toby played defensive end on his high school football team, and after graduation, he followed in his father's footsteps to work in the oil fields. It was supposed to be his career, his future, his life. But fate and a collapsing oil industry had other plans. The loss of his father, H.K. Covel, in a tragic car accident on March 24, 2001, ironically, on his wedding anniversary, devastated Toby and inspired one of his most controversial hits, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. That song, combined with the September 11 attacks, cemented his reputation as country music's most unapologetic patriot. And speaking of patriotism, wait until you hear what Trisha revealed about his true character. The man behind the music. Trisha's most shocking revelations. When Trisha finally took that stage in October 2024, she didn't just accept a medal and sit down. Oh no, she exposed the real Toby Keith in ways that left jaws on the floor. He didn't care what anybody said, Trisha declared with fierce pride. He was a patriot. He loved his country. Toby loved hard, and he lived big. He enjoyed everything he did. He had no regrets. Let that sink in. No regrets. In an industry full of people constantly apologizing, backtracking, and playing it safe, Toby Keith stood his ground every single time. But let's talk about what that really cost him. After Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue dropped in 2002, the backlash was fierce. Some radio stations refused to play it. Critics called him jingoistic, overly aggressive, too controversial. Industry insiders quietly distanced themselves, afraid his bold patriotism might be too much for mainstream appeal. And Trisha? She absorbed every bit of that criticism right alongside him. Imagine being at industry events where people whispered behind your back, questioned your husband's motives, suggested he was exploiting tragedy for profit. The pressure to convince him to soften his message to be more palatable must have been overwhelming. But here's what made Tricia different. She respected his refusal to bend. She understood that the man she married in 1984 was the same man standing on that stage in 2002, unapologetic, honest, and unafraid. That consistency cost them relationships. Old friends drifted away. Invitations dried up. But it also earned them fierce loyalty from millions of fans who were tired of celebrities who said one thing and did another. He didn't care what anybody said, wasn't just a line. It was a way of life that shaped every decision. And Tricia stood firm publicly. Even when privately, she bore the weight of being married to someone the industry loved to argue about. There will never be another Toby Keith, as she perfectly put it, because authenticity like that is rare. She went even deeper, painting a portrait of a man who was so much more than his music. He was a wonderful husband, father, grandfather, or pop-pop to our grandkids, brother, friend, singer, producer, businessman. He was masterful at everything he did. Masterful at everything. And you know what? The receipts back it up. Beyond his music career, Toby founded the label Show Dog Nashville, later Show Dog Universal Music, in 2005. He opened a chain of restaurants called Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill. He had a clothing line called TK Steelmen, and even launched his own mezcal brand called Wild Shot. The man was a business empire. But here's what got everyone emotional. His music, his generosity, and his humanity will outlive not only us, but our children and their children, Tricia promised. And she wasn't just talking about his chart-topping hits. What she meant by that leads us to the most heartwarming part of this entire story. The foundation that changed everything. In 2006, Toby established the Toby Keith Foundation with one crystal-clear mission: to help families with children battling cancer. But he didn't just write checks and show up for photo ops. Oh no, this man went all in. In late 2013, the foundation built the OK Kids Corral, a place for Child OU Medical Center cancer patients to live in. Picture this: a beautiful, state-of-the-art facility where families don't have to worry about where they'll sleep or how they'll afford food while their child fights for their life. It's completely free, zero cost to families when they need it most. Imagine being a mother from rural Oklahoma, your 5-year-old just diagnosed with leukemia. You're facing months of treatment in Oklahoma City, hours from home. Where do you stay? At OK Kids Corral, you walk in exhausted and terrified, and you're handed keys to a fully furnished home. No paperwork demanding payment, just compassion. For Tricia, keeping this place running isn't just charity, it's keeping Toby alive. Every family that walks through those doors is Toby's legacy breathing and continuing. Over 2 decades, the annual Toby Keith and Friends Golf Classic has raised more than $15 million for the OK Kids Corral. And get this, Toby described it to the Oklahoman in 2019 as his greatest accomplishment. Not his music, not his millions, not his awards. The kids. At her Hall of Fame speech, Tricia addressed the foundation with trembling emotion. He might have been worried when he left that the OK Kids Corral would fail after he was gone, but the kids and I are working to be able to help carry that torch and do what we can do to help maintain that legacy that he started. And she's keeping that promise. In May 2025, the 21st annual Toby Keith and Friends Golf Classic took place in Norman, Oklahoma. Hosted by Sammy Hagar and Tricia Covel, the event raised $1.4 million for charity. The gala raised more than $100,000 in the first 2 minutes alone. Tricia serves as vice president on the board of directors of the Toby Keith Foundation, continuing to oversee everything her husband built. The OK Kids Corral remains open, providing families with hope during their darkest hours. Fame fades, records get forgotten, awards collect dust, But this lives forever. But while Trisha was holding it together in public, behind closed doors, the family was dealing with something else entirely. The $400 million estate battle that nobody expected. Just 15 days after Toby's death, Trisha filed papers in Oklahoma court to be named administrator of his estate. And when the details emerged, everyone was shocked by what came next. Toby had an estimated net worth of $400 million, a staggering fortune built from decades of hit records, sold-out tours, business ventures, and smart investments. But here's where it gets interesting. Toby executed his will on December 15, 2022, just months after revealing his cancer diagnosis. Think about that timing. The man knew he was fighting for his life, and instead of pretending everything was fine, he got his affairs in order like the strategic businessman he'd always been. But Trisha didn't just file the will. She asked the court to seal it. The consents signed by each heir contain confidential information regarding not only the heirs, but also the business interests of Toby at the time of his death. This information, if known to the public, would likely increase the threat to the safety and security of the family. Wait, safety concerns? In country music? It sounds dramatic, but when you're worth $400 million and your face has been on TV for 30 years, privacy becomes a matter of security. The judge agreed and granted her request. Of course, the media went wild with speculation. Was there family drama? Secret heirs? Hidden assets? Entertainment blogs churned out theories, each more sensational than the last. But here's what people misunderstood. This wasn't a battle, it was protection. Trisha wasn't fighting anyone. She was protecting her family from a public that felt entitled to every detail. She was safeguarding business interests. She was being the guardian Toby trusted her to be when he signed that will in December 2022, knowing his time might be short. The heirs to the estate are Trisha and their children, Shelley Covel Rowland, Crystal Keith, and Tricia Covel. The probate case is ongoing, but one thing is clear. Toby made sure his family would be taken care of. And speaking of his children, their tributes to their father will absolutely destroy you. The kids who carry his legacy. Toby and Trisha raised 3 incredible children, and each one has honored their father in the most beautiful ways imaginable. Shelley Covel Rowland is the eldest, born in 1980 and adopted by Toby after he married Trisha. She's chosen to stay out of the spotlight, focusing on her own family. She spoke at the 20th edition of the Toby Keith and Friends Golf Classic in June 2024, a rare public appearance that showed her strength. Crystal Keith, born September 30, 1985, followed directly in her daddy's footsteps. She's a country singer who performed with Toby multiple times, including at the 2004 CMA Awards, where they sang Mockingbird together. Her song, Daddy Dance With Me, became popular, and she surprised her father by performing it at her wedding. At the NBC special Toby Keith, American Icon in August 2024, Crystal took the stage to perform Don't Let the Old Man In, the same song her father sang during his final performance. Your impact is forever stamped on the world and on millions of people. Yet not one person knew you the way I did, she wrote in tribute. On the 1-year anniversary of his death, Crystal shared an emotional post. It feels like yesterday we said goodbye, and yet it somehow has also been the longest year without him. Tricia Keith Covel, born October 23, 1997, is the baby of the family and only son. Unlike his sister, he stayed behind the scenes, co-founding Nostalgic Nights, a concert booking company. He married Haley Covel in November 2021, and Toby walked Haley down the aisle, creating a memory Haley cherishes even more now. After his father's death, Stellan posted a tribute that had fans sobbing, "You are the strongest man I have ever known. A fighter, a true titan of your industry, my guiding star, my coach, my hero, an embodiment of the American spirit." And here's the cherry on top. In February 2025, Stellan and Haley announced they were expecting their first child, just days after the one-year anniversary of Toby's death. The couple welcomed their daughter Millie in August 2025, making Tricia a grandmother and adding another member to the Covel family tree. But wait, there's one more tribute that had the entire country in tears. The tribute special that broke records. On August 28, 2024, NBC aired Toby Keith, American Icon, a 2-hour special that became the network's most-watched special of 2024. Taped at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena on July 29, it was everything fans hoped for. The lineup? Insane. Carrie Underwood, Luke Bryan, Eric Church, Ashley McBride, Jelly Roll, Darius Rucker, and Lainey Wilson all performed Toby's biggest hits. But the personal moments had everyone reaching for tissues. Jelly Roll said Keith inspired him to be a better father, dedicating his performance to the late singer's family. Can you imagine? A man who's been gone for months, still inspiring people to be better parents and better humans. Trisha and the kids sat in the audience, visibly moved by every performance and speech. At times, wiping away tears, they also smiled, because this was exactly what Toby would have wanted. No sad funeral vibes, just celebration of a life well lived. A portion of ticket sales went directly to the Toby Keith Foundation's OK Kids Corral and Vanderbilt's Monroe Carell Jr. Children's Hospital. Even in death, Toby Keith was still helping kids with cancer. And there's one more honor that proves his legacy is forever. The Country Music Hall of Fame induction that almost didn't happen. Here's a fact that will break your heart. Toby Keith was elected to the Country Music Hall of Fame just hours after his death. Hours! He missed hearing the news by mere hours, but there's a silver lining to this tragedy. Sarah Traherne, CM, a chief executive officer, confirmed that Keith was elected before his passing. The results just hadn't been officially announced yet. In other words, the vote wasn't because he died, it was because he earned it. The ballots had been cast, the decision made, all while Toby was still fighting. He just never got to know. Imagine being so close to hearing you'd achieved one of country music's highest honors, only to miss it by hours. That's what makes Tricia's Hall of Fame speech even more powerful. She was accepting an honor he never knew he'd won, speaking words he'd never hear. Keith was inducted in October 2024, 1 month after his death, in the Modern Era Artist category. From 1993 until his death in 2024, he had 42 top 10 country hits, 20 #1 hits, and sold more than 40 million records worldwide. The man was a titan of country music. The induction ceremony featured performances from Post Malone, I'm Just Talking About Tonight, Eric Church, Don't Let the Old Man In, and Blake Shelton, I Love This Bar. Randy Owen of Alabama, who officially inducted Keith, had tears in his eyes as he remembered his friend. And that's when Tricia took the stage and delivered that historic 16-minute speech that nobody will ever forget. Toby never had to be branded as authentic. He was the example of authentic, she declared, perfectly summing up a career built on being unapologetically himself. So where does that leave Tricia and the family now? The answer might surprise you. Where are they now? The Covel family. Tricia Covel remains vice president of the Toby Keith Foundation, overseeing the OK Kids Corral and ensuring her husband's greatest accomplishment continues. She's also the founder and creator of Swing Dish, a luxury golf clothing brand for women that she runs with her daughters Crystal and Shelley. This woman isn't just mourning, she's thriving. But let's talk about what that really means. For 40 years, Tricia was Toby Keith's wife. Now she's learning to exist as just Tricia, finding strength in quiet determination to honor his memory by living fully. The 2025 Toby Keith and Friends Golf Classic in May raised $1.4 million. The Schooner Fall Classic, founded by the Foundation and Tricia Covel, continues supporting women's collegiate golf. Events like the Clay Shoot keep money flowing to causes Toby cared about most. Tricia Keith continues her music career while raising her 2 daughters. She performs at tribute events and keeps her father's songs alive. Her social media is filled with loving tributes to Pop. Tricia Covel. Roland maintains her private life but steps up when the family needs her, speaking at foundation events and supporting her mother's business ventures. Tricia Covel is now a father himself. His daughter Millie, born in August 2025, represents the next generation, a generation that will grow up hearing stories about the grandfather they'll never meet, but whose legacy will shape their lives. Toby's official Instagram account continues sharing throwbacks, announcing events, and keeping his memory alive. Recent posts have celebrated his friendship with Clint Eastwood and his patriotic anthems. The family has made it clear, Toby Keith may be gone, but he is not forgotten. And there you have it. The revelations from Toby Keith's wife about his final days, their legendary love story, and the incredible legacy he left behind. From that nightclub in 1981 to the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2024, this couple proved that real love conquers all: poverty, doubt, cancer, and even death itself. Tricia's 16-minute speech wasn't just accepting an honor, it was a declaration that Toby Keith's impact on country music, on charity, and on American culture will echo through generations. If this story moved you, smash that subscribe button, because you never know, we could dive into another country music legend whose family secrets will leave you absolutely speechless. You won't want to miss it.